how government is really inside of the housing industry, and how their policies and the way they behave is really impacting the housing industry.
The process at the municipality needs to be changed. And I feel that the policies are created by people who do not actually experience the problems. I met an elected official about 2 years ago at one of Kayla's events, and he came up to me after the event and he said, "I rent out my condo. I had no idea that I was actually breaking the law."
Last 4 or 5 years, at least an $1,800 water bill sent to me 4 times from 4 different properties. One I didn't even own anymore, and they sent it to me.
In the city of Toronto, if the landlord wants to get a copy of the water bill that is being paid or being sent and being paid by the tenant, it costs the person $18 per water bill. As soon as I requested that I receive a copy, they are now billed an additional $18 per month. That is not fixing the problem. That is adding more cost.
I feel sorry for tenants because they always say, "Oh, the rents are too high." I'm like, guys, actually, most landlords do not make a profit on a monthly basis.
You have people making decisions who don't come from the real estate background, landlord background, or tenant background, and seeing that it's actually causing more damage, not only to the investor, but also to the tenants. We are sitting here today trying to plead with our elected officials. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. My name is Kayla Andrade, and I am the founder of Ontario Landlords Watch. And today I brought some friends with me so that we can discuss how government is really inside of the housing industry, and how their policies and the way they behave is really impacting the housing industry. Before we get started, I want you to introduce you to my friends. So to the right of me, I have Connie Cody, and we have Irene, and we have Tom. So we'll get jumping into Connie here, so she can tell you a little bit about her and where she comes from, so that when she gives you some advice, is that she does come from with a lot of knowledge.
Thank you, Kayla. Thanks for everyone coming out today and joining Kayla here today. And I'm basically a community advocate of late. I've dedicated a lot of time to helping people, a lot of landlords, a lot of tenants, and helping Kayla with the Ontario Landlords Watch. So that's basically where I've been here, and I've been dealing in politics. I've learned a lot about our municipal, provincial, and federal government. Recently just running in the federal campaign. So anyways, that's over with now, and we can move over and continue working together to help make a more efficient policies in place. Perfect.
Irene, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Irene. I'm a third generation landlord and property owner in Ontario. We own houses and apartment buildings in Toronto and Barrie. And we've recently expanded into commercial real estate as well. I believe very strongly in fairness for landlords and tenants, and do everything I can to support that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Tom, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm a retired accountant and educator. I'm the founder of S&S Real Estate Investments, Best Choice Property, Rental Properties, and DT Renovations out in the Durham region.
Perfect. So we got all of us all around, because obviously housing goes right across Canada and obviously into the States, and it all works itself. But obviously we have many problems that we're seeing. We have, obviously, we talk about the landlord and tenant board and what happens, but a lot of our big issues is that we're trying to get change. And sometimes when it comes down to getting change, we need to get change at the provincial level, in which we have many different elected officials there, and we have different elected officials at a municipal and regional level. So when we talk about government involvement, what would you think is, obviously they have full control when it comes down to the Residential and Tenancy Act, but at the same time we have policies and bylaws that are happening in different municipalities, and they're different in each different municipality. I started advocating for landlords when the city of Cambridge made landlords responsible for their tenants' delinquent utility bills.
Oh,
and
my
at
goodness.
that time, I never even knew what that concept was of how to fight it. I just knew that I have a fiveplex, all my tenants have their own individual meters. I don't want to be responsible for that debt if they refuse to pay. And the only option for us at that time was to try to bring them to the board to evict them, but we wouldn't be able to get a judgment. They actually just recently changed it where you can indeed bring a utility bill and try to get a judgment on it, but again, if you can't collect, you can't collect. Now, what is that doing to our encouraging investors into these type of areas to want to invest? Would you invest into a city where you are going to be potentially responsible for that tenant's unpaid water bill, and knowing that you could have that water bill going on for well over a year? So this is where I want to just jump into a little bit quickly of like everyone's thought process on water billing and how that policy in itself is discouraging investors. And obviously the municipalities are looking at, there's a loss here for us and we want to get that money back. But I don't know of any business where you can take all the profits, but you can pass your losses to a third party and be like, it's yours, just because it's coming from your property. So Connie, give us your thoughts process on water billing. It's spreading like a wildfire right across different municipalities.
Yeah. Well, I can see from the municipality point of view, they want to make sure that if they're taking over the water billing, that they get paid. If there's something unpaid, it costs them money, taxpayers' money, to go to court and fight for the payment. And again, like you said, is you can't get money, can't get
Blood out of stone.
blood out of stone, basically, right? So I can see why they did that, because then what happens is the process is, and why landlords are so affected and so concerned, is it goes against their tax bill. So it moves over from an expense to a tax bill, which means then eventually if you don't pay it, it's a lien against the landlord. Now, the other issue with it is landlords are not being made aware of these delinquent bills because they're going towards the tenant. So it could be several months before the landlord's even aware of the situation, and this delay could cause the increase of the delinquent payment. And what's the landlord supposed to do? They're totally unaware of an unpaid bill. When they finally are made aware of it, could be too late, could be when a tenant actually moves out. And how do you get that money back? And but the full concept is the responsibility should fall onto the person that is actually doing the renting, who signed the agreement for the water bill, who's actually should be paying for it. And if this is something that a municipality doesn't want to take care of, they need to have to find some other way of having down payments or collect more money on a monthly basis for future delinquent bills, or have more responsibility towards it. But by loading it onto a landlord, it's only going to create an increase to rents, because landlords are going to obviously try to increase the rents as much as possible to collect any delinquent bills that might occur, and that does not help with affordability.
No, thank you. Thank you. Irene, water billing.
I can tell you that in the city of Toronto, if the landlord wants to get a copy of the water bill that is being paid or being sent and being paid by the tenant, it costs the person $18 per water bill. I'm not exaggerating. I have a commercial tenant who very happily pays the water bill every month for a property. But as soon as I requested that I receive a copy because of my past experience and information shared through other landlords at the Ontario Landlords Watch group, I asked for a copy, and they are now billed an additional $18 per month.
Wow. Ridiculous.
That is not fixing the problem. That is adding more cost. In a day and age where utility bills are preferred to be online, many utilities want them to be online, what exactly is stopping a municipality from allowing both landlord and tenant to log in and see what the water bill is? I can only speak to the municipalities that we have properties in. I don't know how it works elsewhere, but that is not something that's happening in the cities of Toronto or Barrie.
Wow, crazy. They make it like it's bad enough they make it now just to try to get a bill out of it.
And again, I can only speak to my experiences, but when that water bill is not paid and it is transferred onto your property tax bill, you cannot guarantee that it is transferred onto the property tax bill of that property in the city of Toronto. The city of Toronto, when you own more than one property, creates like a default property for you. And so when you own multiple, you might experience a fee or something transferred to property tax, and all it says is it's transferred to property tax. When you call them, they're like, oh, that was for another property. So when you look at a relationship like one person owning one property, again, it's completely different when you look at maybe a property management company that is looking after a property for multiple or different properties for multiple owners. Again, the process at the municipality needs to be changed. And I feel that the policies are created by people who do not actually experience the problems.
Well said. That's exactly where it is. We have people making decisions who don't come from the real estate background, landlord background, or tenant background, and seeing that it's actually causing more damage, not only to the investor, but also to the tenants. Now, before I get back into water billing, let's get Tom's thought process on water billing and how landlords are being forced to swallow a debt that wasn't consumed by them.
I think it's bogus, and I think it's something that they really need to address. I've had, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, at least an $1,800 water bill sent to me 4 times from 4 different properties. One I didn't even own anymore, and they sent it to me. And as Irene pointed out, trying to get them to send it to you, it is like pulling teeth. I'm in the Durham region. The number of times that they get it wrong, I'm like, what's going on? Why am I not getting my water bills? So I sold the house. A year later, I get the water bill. And went, what's this? I don't even own the house anymore. I had to fight with them. I inherited a water bill from another property owner. Wasn't found. That was taken care of by the title insurance, thank God. But that still took a while to do. But I'm not the one consuming it. Yes, I'm owning it. They have the tenant's name on the water bill, because in Durham, you can put both names, the landlord and the tenant. They're consuming it. Go after them.
Yeah.
Why are they coming after us? It's not fair.
And this is where you want to know how it could affect the tenant. Like Connie mentioned, the increase of rent is going to skyrocket because the landlords are not going to still try to incorporate the utility within that rent if they don't have to. They will still keep it separate. They will just try to increase the rent to cover any outstanding water bill that could potentially hit their property taxes. And then you've got to control how many people. That's why landlords are more concerned now. How many people are wanting to move into this unit? Because if you are a bigger family, you're obviously going to be using more utilities. More utilities means a huge bill, and a huge bill that's going to be put to my property taxes. So what it's done is that it created a platform in where many landlords are looking for smaller families to come into rental units, then having to put in bigger families with that. And the concept of a tenant being able to lose their home because the water bills are increasing on a rate every single year. Their rates go up a lot higher than what a landlord's increase of rent this year alone is 1.2%, but the water rates and all the other rates of gas and hydro have also increased there as well. So if they want to try to deal with affordable housing, and that's what every elected official is crying for, is affordable housing, but they refuse to listen to landlords and developers to say, this is what we're having to increase our rents is because of policies such as water billing. Because what it's done, it's going to result me as an investor to look in cities where water billing is not currently in their policies, and it's going to allow me to put more money into that in particular area. And it's going to have its flow. If I have water billing fiasco here in Cambridge, it's obviously going to pass itself down to other regions because that's where they're going to go, and we're going to see an influx. So we have a problem where obviously we're against it. They look at it as a whole, but knowing that taxpayers are going to be paying to deal with tenants who are not able to be positioned in a home because of water billing, we're now paying for it as taxpayers when we have to create that need for more government housing where we don't have any more monies in the coffers to keep building, managing, and maintaining and subsidizing government housing when it comes down to different risks that we have to look out for. So now we get ourselves into water billing a little bit. I know we're going a little bit too fast regarding water billing because I can tell you we have a lot more that could go on based on the transferring over to your property taxes houses with $50 fees. Tom talks about that concept of not knowing what the bill is, how you get a bill, and not getting the bills to the tenant, or even a leak. You know, if a tenant had a leak in their unit and now the bill, they didn't know, they didn't tell you about it, you never done your inspection, and now the tenant is refusing to pay that in particular water bill because of the leak. So then things are going to get a little bit hairy at the landlord and tenant board, because now you're going to say, well, you didn't do your due diligence on that leaky toilet, but the tenant didn't tell you about that leaky toilet, and now you have a bill of $1,000. We have a problem. You have now landlords going, yeah, you own a single family home, that's great, you want to put a pool up, but guess what? I don't want to get that bill, so no pools on the property. It's more restrictions that are not fair to these tenants, and this is why we do our best to advocate on getting these type of policies removed from municipal government in a way to better the housing industry. Now, another topic of municipal involvement of landlord licensing. I'm gonna go right to Irene on this one, because we got a concept of landlord licensing for different things, and it's in different systems and different requirements. But we have something special in Toronto, and they even got it. I think you have a car with the logo, if I'm not corrected, with the program that they have introduced in Toronto.
Yes. So a new program came into Toronto a few years ago called Rent Safe TO. My goodness, we could probably have a whole program on that. It was brought in for many different reasons. They were concerned that the property standards as a whole in Toronto were not being maintained in many of the older buildings. And I'm sure that might be the case. The largest landlord in the city of Toronto is an organization called Toronto Community Housing, which is run by the city of Toronto. Consistently and documented, you can find out that some of the worst buildings, unfortunately, in the city of Toronto are these buildings. So public landlords, or sorry, I should say private landlords, like myself, are not necessarily in the same category as these buildings, but we are now all required to abide by the same set of rules and regulations. I don't have a problem abiding by rules and regulations. What I have a problem with is a system, a rubric of marking a building, of grading a building, where all the information is not presented to the property owner. So for example, we are informed that we're having an inspection. The inspector comes, takes photos, gives us a grade at the end. Our hallways were marked at a 3 out of 5. What can I do to get a 5 out of 5? No one can tell me. There is no example of one scuff mark is a 3, 2 scuff marks is a 2. There's nothing like that.
No funny.
Lighting comes under its own category. So what was wrong with the hallway that I only got a 3? What could I have done to get a 5? When the answer from the City of Toronto inspectors, after much prodding, and including my city councillor and including the mayor, when I finally get that answer, and the answer is, you passed, what does it matter? That is not encouraging me to be a better landlord. That is not encouraging me to take better care of my property. Instead, what that's doing is teaching me to do the absolute minimum I need to do to make sure they don't come back for a year or 2 years. And that's not good for anybody.
Now, if you had something where it needed to be addressed because of your inspection, what is the requirements for you? How do they force you to do what they want you to do in order to put it to standards?
Right. So first of all, an inspection, and I can only use my own examples. 2 years ago, we were inspected on Halloween. On Halloween, October 31st, we were inspected. We did not physically receive the report from that inspector until the first week of January. Now, when that report came in and it said graffiti, that's all it said. I immediately called my maintenance staff that had done the walkthrough, and I said, where? We treat graffiti very seriously. Where was it? They have no record of it. When I contacted the city and I said, I will deal with it today. I will personally go out there and deal with it today. They were not able to tell me. In fact, when I escalated it, I was told, well, there had to be, look at the neighborhood. That is not an answer. That is not teaching me to be a better landlord and take better care of my property. That is teaching me that the inspection process is broken. One of the parts of the Rent Safe TO program is I'm required to have a notice board in a public area that has a lot of information, including contact information, a cleaning schedule, a pest control schedule. There is a rule under Rent Safe that says I cannot rent a unit in my building if I have an active pest control situation. So an apartment on the 6th floor calls me and says, we've got roaches. I have a legal obligation to deal with it, and I will deal with it very quickly. But now I cannot rent that unit on the 2nd floor because I'm dealing with an active situation. We have a no fault, no blame pest policy. We encourage our tenants, please report any pest control issue.
Wow.
But we still often find that tenants are reluctant to do so. There's a stigma attached to reporting it. So when I see you dragging your mattress down the hall and I ask what's up and you tell me you think you have bed bugs, now I'm behind the ball. I need to treat your unit. I need to treat the hallway. And I am supposed to post at this notice board that our building is currently dealing with bed bugs.
Wow. And but the government housing though, so for government housing, they're not following this requirement.
I can only tell you about my building that we follow this rule. Now here's the thing, if I post that notice and I'm being a responsible, prudent landlord and I'm doing everything I can to deal with those bed bugs, and you come in to look at a unit, you're going to notice that notice board. And now I potentially could have missed out on renting to you because even though I'm doing everything I can, I've now basically advertised that there's bed bugs in the building. So the process in this case is broken. One other very short thing I'd like to share with you is that we are required to keep a cleaning log. Fully support regular cleaning inspections of a multi-residential building. When they first brought this program out, they wanted us to record unscheduled cleaning. So for example, Mr. and Mrs. Miller walk into the building, they're on their way to their unit, and they spill their nice extra large double-double in the lobby. My maintenance staff is now supposed to write, cleaned up, double-double, lobby, 3 p.m.
You're hearing it here, guys. You're hearing it here.
I'm sorry. At the first few introduction sessions for the Rent Safe program, I continually spoke up and I said, again, that's not helping the situation. Giving my staff more work on top of cleaning is not going to make our building better. Our buildings are not the problem. Your problem buildings need to be addressed. Anyway, I could go on about it.
No, we're going to come back to you on this.
But what I want to make very clear is your private landlords are paying a significant amount of money to belong to this program. We are legally obligated to.
How much is it to be a part of the program?
Approximately $3 per unit, I believe. It might be a little bit more now per year. That adds up.
Oh, yes.
My 100 and 150 unit apartment buildings, it's anything over so many units and anything over 3 stories. So I each building has its own bill per year. That's a significant cost to me that once again, I'm not able to turn around and recoup because of the way rent increases are going. That's on top of my already increasing insurance costs and my already increasing utility costs. So it further ties my hands. And when I do see that apartment building sale email that comes in, it's in a great neighborhood. In fact, it's near one of my other properties. Am I interested in buying it? No. Let one of the really big companies that have, the bad reputation that people don't want to live at, let them buy it because they can afford it. I just don't have the energy to continually deal with the city to work so hard to try to be a good landlord.
Wow. Yeah, that's and that's again, it's like you call it, the SAFE program, and then you call it landlord licensing in other places, but obviously it's an extra cost that's obviously preventing these units from being rented out. More people on the streets waiting in an unsafe living arrangement in order when there could be one there. And again, it's not like you have control. You can't control, your tenants when they do bring in cockroaches or they have bed bugs or they're not doing their due diligence when it comes down to helping you deal with the bed bugs in itself, because or cockroaches, there's certain things that they have to do for their unit to prepare it for the type of for the exterminator to come in and deal with the issue. And sometimes they have it make it really difficult for you to even try to deal with that part. But again, it's gone. Whatever happened to the complaint? Here's the tenant, they're able to complain, you go to property standards, and then they come in and investigate. They're just using this now almost like a cash cow and a job that they can keep rotating out and keep
private landlords are, it feels that the private landlords are paying the bill for that public landlord that is behind the ball needing to pay for a lot of repairs. And when you take into account somebody who wants to follow the rules, who wants to have the inspections, who wants that clean building, to continually be put under this microscope year after year after year, without a proper marking rubric of how I can do better. Coming into my building in the middle of August, it's a very old apartment building. We don't have central air. We have humidity pop-outs in the walls. Grade me at a 3 for my hallway, no problem. But tell me that once I have those removed, that would have been a 4 or that would have been a 5. Give me what I need to get that great mark, to be able to say to people, this is a great building to live. Please come and live here. Please pay your rent. Please be happy to be part of our community here.
Even with a housing crisis, we need every unit that counts right now, and that's what they're doing. They're really taking one out. Just because of the restrictions. It's the red tape. They talk about, it was through the federal campaign about what they plan to do for affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're really nailing the problems to deal with, coming up with solutions. Tom, give us your thought process on this landlord licensing, because if it's not in your city now, it's gonna be, because we've had counselors, and I'll go back to you after, Irene, because I want to know how many counselors actually voted for such a thing, and is it actually doing what it was meant to do? But Tom, give us your thought process.
They've thought about it multiple times and discussed it multiple times in my area, and they've turned it down every time because they do realize we're just going to pass that cost on to tenants. But the problem is we can't pass it on to the current tenants, so it's going to be on the future tenant. When they move out, we're going to increase the rents even higher. And I feel sorry for tenants because they always say, oh, the rents are too high. I'm like, guys, actually, most landlords do not make a profit on a monthly basis. And you guys will love this story. This was about 2-3 years ago. An advocate for landlords and tenants in the Durham region, he was at a government function. And he said, landlords would love if we can do transparency. All the government officials loved it until he explained what transparency meant. So every time you guys increase the utility rates or anything that the government is increasing onto a landlord, we're going to show that to the tenant, and that's allowable increase to the rent for that year. They all shut up and said, we don't like it. They loved it when he said transparency until they actually told what transparency was. Wow. So because they want to generate revenue for them, for their misuse of spending, but they want us to be the fall guy and look like the bad people.
Yep.
But we are trying to come up with solutions. I know Ontario Landlords Watch has presented the government with a multiple 100-page document to come up with solutions. They're not implementing it. They like to see the key words during election time. We're going to do affordable housing. How? We don't have the money, and we don't know how to do it. Yeah. Justin mentioned affordable housing in his 2015 and 2019 election. Where is it? He's been there for 6 years. Nothing. It's not going to happen, guys. We are the solution, and we are trying to help provide solutions. And it's not just saying, hey, we want to increase all of our rents to knock everybody out. We're actually coming up with solutions for every income level, not just one.
Yeah.
In my area, like I specialize in making multiple unit homes, so converting a single family home to a 2-family home for density. We have different rules in every municipality. Why is that? Why can't we have one consistent rule to make it easier for everybody to know what to do? They don't want to do it because it's a cash cow for them. And I swear to God, some of them just do it just like, I'm not going to blame all the inspectors. They have to justify the job.
Yeah.
Now, most of them I work really well with, but I've heard some really horror stories from other renovators. And the licensing, I know I think it was you, Connie, that mentioned about the timeline to build a property, and why aren't we building duplexes from day one? I can tell you why. If you apply to build a single family home and build it with a legal basement in it right away, or like to meet the qualifications, the fee to do that is something, I'm going to use my area, about $10,000 to $15,000. I do the application to build it as a legal 2-unit from day one, it's $50,000. I can apply for the permit afterwards for $500. Why wouldn't I do it that way?
Well, and that's why that has to be fixed. And like you're mentioning about all these programs that are out there that is being run by the municipality. But what people don't understand is you have staff, you've got overhead, you've got computers, everything that are all running this program to maintain it. The inspectors and everything, they've all got salaries. There's a cost to it. And so when there's a cost to it, it affects all taxpayers, not just landlords. It affects all taxpayers. And this is where budget time is really important. And I've been heavily involved with our budget meetings in our local municipality. I hardly see anybody involved. And I don't understand why when it comes to budget time, that the landlords are not there, at the meetings, reading the budgets. Like, all the landlords should be there to hear what's going on, because all these programs that they're implementing is costly. And so currently with the pandemic and stuff like that in our municipality, they're looking at doubling our taxes. So every single unit, every building that everyone's using right here as a rental unit is going to go increase, but you're only allowed a 1.2% increase of rent. So how many more landlords are we going to lose because they're right at the budget line, as right at the cusp of what they can for paying all their bills? And so as these taxes are being raised, we've got our water billing and our water and treatment services increasing as well. And if that's all going up, and then you have an increase to your assessment value, because what people fail to realize is it's not just your taxes going up. If your assessment value in your home goes up, the taxes are on the higher assessment value as well. So the amount of taxes that people are paying are outrageous right now. And we're not even getting all the services. So the more programs that they have that are costly to the taxpayers, the higher the taxes go up, which then is going to hit all the landlords, which then downloads onto the tenants, because you're going to want to have higher rent. So they're going to try to eliminate all our lower paid rental units, and so that they can update them to create the money for affordability for these units, or we're going to lose landlords. And right now we can't afford to lose our landlords.
But you know what's sad though, is that every election, because there's going to be an election coming up now, and when you're looking at provincial, you're looking at municipal, and they're always, all of them are going to have affordable housing. And when they come and they talk to people about affordable housing, they really like to put it on their platform where it's going to attract tenants, trying to get more tenant votes, and giving them the type of information, not knowing what that repercussion could be to them, such as, hey, we're going to make things safe for you. We're going to get landlord licensing so that we want to make sure that your landlord has a criminal record check done every 5 years, making sure that they're getting electrical checks done to their properties, making sure they're checking their HVAC system, and making sure the smoke detectors are being checked, but not knowing that it is going to result into an increase of rents. I've had many of our property management clients who have taken out their property out of a city in Waterloo because of landlord licensing. When you have to pay a fee to be having your license, and then you have to pay at least $250 just for someone to come in and look at your HVAC system and say, everything's all good. But the tenant you can leave, and the tenant can put all their stuff back into that furnace room, cause a hazard in itself. It's pointless. It's pointless, and it's driving the rent up. We have to look at resulting into having that open dialogue for the tenants, that if you do have an issue with your rental unit, please communicate with your landlord. These are the ways that you can communicate with your landlord. This is how you're going to put it in writing, so that it's in writing, it's documented. If not, then I would encourage you to apply to the Landlord and Tenant Board to have your dispute dealt with. If it's a long wait time, yes, you can contact the property standards and have them investigate the situation. And this is a part of the solution process where sometimes we have vindictive tenants. I can't say that we have all good tenants because we do have a lot of them, but sometimes tenants like to know that this is the process, the procedure that a landlord is supposed to follow. So what they do, they'll actually damage something and make it look like it was not done or that the landlord did it, and now they're calling property standards. And property standards, it's going to be like, well, you need to fix it. Well, I need to go to the board with my tenant. Well, you need to fix it. So this is where we have so many hands in the cookie jar, and I think there's got to be a way that if there was a judgment brought to the landlord and tenant board, then that judgment can be given to property standards for property standards to follow up on. You know, there's a process. Why are landlords and investors are supposed to go through the process of the landlord and tenant board when tenants can skip that process and get what they want? Because I know the property standards is not going to help landlords try to collect from the actual tenants when they stop paying rent. So now that we got ourselves into water billing, we got ourselves into landlord licensing. Now, obviously, the government knows that this is, you know, small landlords are a part of our solution to creating supply. They want to work with small landlords and encourage small landlords to work with the municipalities in the region in order to house people who are waiting for government housing, as you all know. And that was a more of a, hey, you know, we're calling, we have some people, do you want them? Landlords are like, nope, I'm sorry, the RTA, the LTB, it is what it is. I can't take the risk right now. I'm not interested into that program. Now they come up with a different program in different municipalities where the head lease person is not with the tenant, but it's with the city. And a lot of people are like, wow, that's awesome, you know, you're improving. You got, you know, the city's on the lease, we're going to be guaranteed the rent, we're going to be guaranteed some damages, and we're going to be guaranteed that they're going to provide a mediator just in case the communication breaks down between the landlord and the tenant. But you think that's all good, but if you look at the fine print of it, you have the concept where you have the city as the head lease. If there's a dispute now that you need to deal with, you now need to go within the city's dispute process. And let's say that you're not liking or they're not liking the solution that's being thought of, the tenant could actually still apply to the landlord and tenant board and for whether their rights even apply. So there obviously is that delay tactic now of you can't remove that tenant out of the property because they are going through that process of whether their rights apply. So there is going to be different programs coming out from different levels of government in order to entice landlords to work with them, such as the Region of Waterloo. They wanted to give you, what was it, Connie? $25,000
yeah,
to create a secondary suite in your basement unit. So it's like, wow, that money would help. Would it cover? Not so much. Maybe 70 to 100,000 is what's needed for the secondary suite. You guys know better. But you have to
pay for a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that concept where now that you are giving us some money, you're restricted based on who you can rent to. So this is where, are you going to want to deal with the province or deal with the region in order to take their program to help you continue to keep building supply, or would you rather go get the money from a loan shark or one of your buddies? You want to loan me $25,000 and then I can rent it to whoever I want?
Back pocket right here.
We got it. So this is
you know that low interest rate is what, 2-3%. Even if you're borrowing at 10%, okay, so you borrow it for a year, you're paying $2,500. You're going to have to, with the city, they're going to ask you to have it probably below market rent for $500 for 1 year. That's $6,000. What is the cheaper way to go, guys? Like, it is a business, and the new going rate now is closer to $125 to $160 for a basement apartment. I was an investor called me up yesterday from Hamilton saying, would I go to Hamilton to build? Because his quotes are $160 right now. I'm like, that's crazy. I'll come down. I'll put myself up in the hotel down there, and I can build it for cheaper. But that's, new rates have gone up. Material costs have gone up. People don't realize it. Like, the government's not realizing it's costing a lot for us to put these units into our house.
There's no true definition of affordability, and it's not comparable to the higher costs. And you have to look at, as well as wages have not gone up as you know, at an equal level as cost of living has gone up. So the gaps are getting wider and wider. And so all these solutions that they came up with about 10 years ago and even just a few years ago are no longer working. So we have to look a lot more efficiencies, and we actually have to work together. We have to have more landlords in the conversations, and not just the developers. We have to combine everybody all together in these conversations.
The funny part that I find too is that they create these programs, and it's like, how many landlords have you sat around that table and discussed this program before you just implemented it? None.
My big concern is always accountability. Who is responsible? As you said, when I have a dispute with that tenant, what is my process now? But also, when I sign that agreement and you want me to promise to be loyal to this program for 5 years, that might be more than one tenant. Now, what happens at the end of that tenancy when the unit's been destroyed? And again, not every tenant is destroying units, but unfortunately, I've come from a place where I've experienced this enough that I have to think about that. And I have to think, am I really going to want to rent to this organization or to the type of tenants that this organization is providing me again and again? Yeah. An example from my own business, we purchased a small sixplex in Barrie. We found out after we had purchased, not everything was fully disclosed, that one of the units was subject to a subsidy. And we contacted them and we found out that half of this tenant's rent came from one organization and half came from another. And that the second part wanted me to sign an agreement. They wanted me to sign an agreement for 10 years. 10 years that I would make that unit available. And the best part was they wanted me to make other units in my building available as well, so that I would give preference to tenants who were under this particular subsidy. So I'd never encountered this before, so I did my research. I found out that I would not get to pick my own tenant. Again, I believe very strongly that people deserve a safe place to live, but I don't necessarily agree that it's with me, that it's within one of my properties where I have once again lost control of who is in that building. And going back to something that Tom said in a previous video about people being compatible. If I'm not able to do a proper screening on a tenant moving in because I've signed this agreement, it's going to be even twice as hard for me to be able to maintain that property going forward. Accountability, but also sustainability. How many times am I going to be comfortable renting this way? And the answer is, I opted not to sign that agreement with the municipality. And when the tenant's rent wasn't fully paid, I sat down with their social worker and I had to have a very difficult conversation with them about having to find someplace else to live. And the municipality could not believe that I didn't want to wave this flag and be so happy to sign this agreement. And once again, it came down to, I don't think they've ever been a property owner, and I don't think they've ever dealt with, beyond creating this beautiful piece of paper that they were offering out to people, they had not actually lived with it in practice.
Exactly.
And that's the gap that I think is missing, is the people who are making the decisions are not having to live with it.
Same thing with one of my landlords here in town. She was approached and it was a 5-year contract, and where it would be put for senior adults with a disability. Mm-hmm. And obviously she wanted to help, but because of the requirements and the stipulation, she and the landlord and tenant board and what happens there, she ended up not wanting to go on their programs. So this is the concept, or our call to action for our elected officials, is that before you create these type of policies and procedures and programs, is that you work with the people who you're trying to reach out to. It's your clientele. It's more of the concept of having that open communication, because as you can see, these programs are obviously costing time, taxpayers' time, as well as the paper and everything that needs to be, it's almost like a campaign. You know, we've had many people here running a campaign of being a housing hero, you know, be a part of this program, help people who often are in need. But this is not a one size fits all. We have multiple different type of properties. We have government properties. We have single family homes. We have families. There's different ways in order to create these solutions that is going to help all tenants involved, but we do need to have a collaboration with our elected officials, because right now it's pulling teeth, and I've been doing it for 10 years, and I know how hard it is in order to get, you know, your MPP, who is now not in a caucus because obviously this didn't agree with the party, and now we're getting ourselves in, well, I need to get to the minister, and then the minister sends us his parliamentary assistant, but guess what, the parliamentary assistant is now changed, she's gone doing something else, so we have a new one. So by the time they come in and they get to know all the problems, they're now out again. And same thing on a regional level. We have many people on contract. So when they're in contract, in a position to create these type of programs, when they get that concept of what needs to get done, their contract is done and they're another person inside. So there is a lot of disconnect even through government in itself. And then to have the disconnect on them not knowing what it's like to be a renter or a landlord in Ontario. And that's why we want to make sure that we are able to educate you what it's like, because we need more housing heroes, housing advocate heroes, in order for you to know what it's like, in order to keep advocating and to keep lobbying the government in order to make changes that are practical, not play politics with the housing market. And that's what each and every single councillor, regional councillor, MP, MPP do, is that they play politics with the housing industry. And the funny part is they'll always do this. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. No, it's not me. I was on a conference in Ottawa with Tony Miller, and I literally said that they always point to each other. Oh, it's the province. Oh, it's the region. Or it's this. And literally, one of the counselors that was sitting beside me decided to point to, and he caught himself, and it was like, told ya. This is the problem. When you can just point a finger instead of saying it's not my jurisdiction, it's not my area, but I'm going to make sure that we can get that meeting from that, because there needs to be a collaboration and we need a whole, because housing is right across the board. It shouldn't be different from each municipality. We need to have almost like a housing bureau, in my opinion, where you get to know how many tenants are moving into the area, how many rental units do we need, how many rental units do we have, and when we should be promoting more development in that area. Because I know our developers are struggling just as much as small landlords, where they want to build, but they have, you know, the community saying, I don't want it, or they have the red tape that is happening, or I want you to do this now, so we're going to delay that development because I want you to show me something different, which is going to cost them money and also cost them time. But most importantly, look at their supply. Their supply of material is now gone up, and now the cost of them building affordable is now decreasing. So we have to take in consideration that they don't want that, but municipalities are like, no to secondary suites, but guess what? We want a tiny home in your backyard. That's weird. Guys, we want to give you one tip. Let's say one tip to a landlord, but also one suggestion to our elected officials, no matter what level they are. Go, Irene.
To the elected officials, take the time, go through the process. I met an elected official about 2 years ago at one of Kayla's events, and he came up to me after the event and he said, I rent out my condo. I had no idea that I was actually breaking the law, the rules. And I said, you don't go through the process. You think you know, but you don't know. So elected officials, if you're creating the paperwork, sit there and go through the process. And if I had to offer a tip to a new landlord or a small landlord, read that fine print, because it's very scary if this is your livelihood, if this is your retirement, if this is your future children's university money that you're investing into a property and it's your only property. You really need to look out for yourself, because these government officials are not worried about you.
Well said, well said. Tom.
So to the electives, listen to all the game players involved. So it's not just tenants, it's also landlords, developers, the individual governments, and be accountable. Mm-hmm. Hold yourself accountable for your actions. So if you're not going to do something timely, don't do it at all, get out. And then for investors and landlords, just educate yourself. Read all the fine print, like Irene said. Realistically, as much as you want to be compassionate, most of the programs are not there in your best interest. They're in the interest of the government, not for you. You're running a business, and run it so you stay above water. You don't have to be making a ton of money, but this is a business, and you can't pay your bills with compassion. So you have to make some kind of profit to pay those bills, to keep the lights on.
Thank you, Tom. Well said. Connie.
Well, for me, to landlords, get involved. Get involved with the budget process. It's very important. That's the time that your voice can be heard at council and to the councillors, and hold them accountable. The other way is to get involved and make sure you learn about your candidates before you vote and before someone becomes an elected official, that you speak to them directly. Don't rely on the headlines. Don't rely on the media. Go to the person, the candidate themselves, and talk to them. Find out about them. Ask your important questions, because that is overall what affects you on a day-to-day basis until the next election. So definitely get involved. And for our ones who are elected officials, they have to realize that every decision that is being made affects the taxes. Taxes affect the cost of living. When all of that increases and nothing else is balanced out with wages or anything, it actually increases the amount of subsidies that have to go out, because there's a lot more people who cannot afford the current cost of living. And that creates a deflationary spiral that we just keep on circling by, with increasing taxes, increasing subsidies, and it's never ending, and it's completely unsustainable. So every decision that's being made when it comes to increasing taxes, look at the cumulative effect and how it affects housing, because everyone's talking about affordable housing, but they're not realizing that the decisions being made today is what affects the affordability of tomorrow.
The definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting different results. One wise woman told me.
Who was that?
Don't know. Don't know.
Well, I got that from someone else.
We have to open up our doors. We have to think outside the box. We have to bring in different players in order to create that fair and balanced housing system. And this is what it's all about, being on this channel, discussing these ideas and these issues with you and our solutions. This is why I became the landlord, the ambassador to Landlord Credit Bureau, so that I can inform as many landlords out there to report their tenants' monthly payment history, to report good and bad debt to Landlord Credit Bureau, so you can help your tenants build credit, or you can actually hold them accountable when the time comes. But this is what we have resulted in. It's not a spit and a handshake anymore to letting people in our units, and the government officials do have to see that it is affecting our housing industry and how our housing population is of our housing stock is decreasing, and our homeless population is increasing. And what's sad is that we do have our seniors who have become the face of our homeless population, and we should not have that in Canada. We are sitting here today trying to plead with our elected officials, and I hope that our newly elected lovely Justin, oh my God, pray for us all that we can create something at a federal level that does have some consistency when it comes down to all levels of government, because we have many different levels of government involved and they are changing. So before you invest into that city, make sure you understand their rules, their regulations, their policies, their procedures, and what you need to do in order to be a landlord within that community. And what sadly is going to happen is that if they do have policies and bylaws that are not favorable into investing, that city is going to suffer, and the jobs will suffer there too. So it is a chain reaction. I want to thank everyone to being a part of this today, and I look forward to speaking with you again for future videos on the Canadian Real Estate channel. And I do want to thank obviously Irene and Tom and Connie. Like, you guys you get me thinking. My head is always in the game when I get to speak with this fantastic team. We have more people that we can bring to you to let you see that this is not, we're not playing politics in the housing industry. We're being practical, and we want to bring common sense to it, and it's going to take multiple different players. And we want to invite all of our elected officials to our conference that we will be hosting in the next coming months in order to bring that collaboration together. And that's what I do. We want to give back, make sure that you are a part of Landlord Credit Bureau, be a part of Ontario Landlords Watch members, so that we can help you out with the day-to-day management, navigate the residential and tenancy and the landlord and tenant board. And together we can create a fair and balanced housing system for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. Subscribe to the Canadian Real Estate channel, share it as with whomever you can. Let's be a part of this community, because real estate is a great thing to do, and it's a great way to build your financial freedom. And we want to thank you again for watching. I'm Kayla Andrade.